to I've Got a Cool Job, Aurora Public Library's interview series where we talk with cool professionals who do interesting work. I'm Sam Marcello, and this week I have my darling friend of 12 years, Kimberley Wallace, who works for Game Informer. I'm so proud of you, Kim.
Oh, thank you. Thank you.
Kimberley discovered her passions for games at an early age, forming a love of RPGs. She's a University of Iowa graduate with degrees in journalism and English and knew she wanted to combine games and writing as her career. She strives to showcase the positive influences of games, something that she has firsthand experience with, having games as part of her pain management for chronic illness. Besides her life revolving around cutscenes, she's also an avid hockey fan. Sorry, Minnesota. The Blackhawks will forever own her heart.
Ooh.
I will say, you're the only person I know who's ever won more Stanley Cup playoffs than the Maple Leafs.
I play a lot of EA's NHL series. It's very, very important to be lifting those Stanley Cups. Someone's got to do it.
Someone's got to lift those up high.
Mm-hmm.
All right. So, Kimberley, how are you doing today?
I'm doing great. How are you?
As you can see, I'm pretty jolly. I'm always having a good time.
Hey, yo.
Hey, yo. All right. So why did you want to pursue journalism, and specifically, why games journalism?
Yeah, it's an interesting question. I think as I was growing up, I always loved writing. And as I was going through high school in particular, more teachers were kind of commenting on my abilities to write. It's something I started really enjoying. So I went to college. I was like, I'll try journalism, and I ended up double majoring in English as well. And I remember I was in a journalism course, and one of them was called fine arts and culture reporting and writing. Now I remember it. And we do reviews of stuff. So we were reviewing music, TV, movies, whatever. And my professor had taken me aside and he was like, I think you really got a knack for this. Like, you should consider doing it professionally. He's like, what are some of your interests and hobbies? And he had brought up video games, which was interesting to me at the time because I always just played games and I never really thought of it as anything that you could make a career out of or anything. So I remember when I graduated from college after I got my journalism degree, I always loved telling people stories. I always, loved going through and really diving deep into subjects and learning about things. But I was like, how do you bring that into video games? And I was frequently a fan site at the time, a lot called RPG Fan, because I wanted to talk about RPGs with people. So I was just on the message boards and I was like, I should see if they need any writers and, kind of learn about the industry, because everybody thinks right away, oh, you just write about video games. But I mean, there's so much that goes into video games, you developers, publishers, learning the history and what goes into actually making a game and kind of the connections you need to form. It's not as cut and dry. And then you add in trying to critique games, is a whole other ball game than just writing, I really like this game. So I kind of learned about the industry and what it took through doing that job. And then I kind of from there started getting more opportunities. But yeah, I just really put myself into the position and decided, that's how I'm going to learn. And like I said, there's so much more that goes into it than I think people expect.
Absolutely. I mean, that's how you and I actually met years ago, was through respective fan sites. And it's amazing how much the games industry has changed since you and I had started, way back when in the old yesteryears.
Let's not age ourselves here.
Let's not age ourselves here. But that leads me kind of into my next question, which is, how do you feel about the state of games journalism now?
I feel like things are changing in a way that I have seen constantly with just journalism in general. And I think it's all going through a transformation, right? People are more glued to their screens than ever. And I remember when I was in college, they're like, print is dead, everything's online, what are you going to do? There was all this worry. And I think we're seeing that now kind of cross into the games industry with just like influencers are now a thing. Streaming games became very popular. The job demands, I feel like, more than ever because you need to be multi-talented. It's no longer good enough to just be able to write. And being able to write is actually a really difficult thing that I don't think a lot of people, think about until they go down to really do it. That's a skill. Editing's a skill. Being able to talk on camera is a skill. Being able to play a game and talk is a very big skill. Okay, like you have to kind of be multi-talented and also be aware that things are changing and that you're gonna have to kind of be on your toes and think of unique ways to make the content that you want, like the days everybody right now they read their news in such little bites, like they want things fast. They want, news comes so quickly. There's entertainment within the videos, but it's being able to kind of manage all that. And I see a lot of change in general with the industry of just how it's approaching things. And games now, we can say that just to go there. Games are just so much more complex than they ever were. Like, I know when we grew up, we had to kind of fill in the blanks a lot with some of the graphics and even some of the storytelling, right? Like a lot of that came from us putting our own things on. We had very limited stuff. And now you have stuff with like full-blown themes and crazy, symbolism. And like I said, there are games that are just devoted to story, and there are games that the world is its story. And I think that's fantastic. More people are gaming than ever, and there's more experiences than ever. And I think the industry is trying harder than ever to be more inclusive and aware of that in a way that I think when you and I were growing up was not really. We were just like, all right, you can play these games, but you're not considered in that main demographic. And now I'm happy to say that more and more people are being considered of a wider range of ages, ethnicities, gender, everything that you can possibly think of now, and being included in games, which is awesome.
I think it is amazing how much games have changed, especially, when we were working at RP Gamer and RPG Fan, respectively. You think about the RPGs we were playing back then, and now we have like these giant open world games. Assassin's Creed is now an RPG. Like,
yeah, that's crazy.
Alone is kind of weird in its own right. You have games like, Cyberpunk using celebrity lookalikeness to enhance a story about just being a nobody in a unique world.
Mm-hmm.
There are so many kinds of games out there. There are games out there that talk about depression.
Yep.
It's amazing how much things have changed and how far the industry is willing to go to challenge some of these elements and say, like, let's have these conversations.
Yeah, exactly. We still have a long way to go. Don't get me wrong.
Absolutely.
It would be disingenuous not to acknowledge that. But like I said, I say the industry is always changing, always growing. And, if it's not, then what's even, that's not good. We don't want to stay stagnant. So hopefully as time goes on, like this continues to just keep, getting better. And like I said, I never think it's a bad thing to have more voices and more, perspectives being brought into the development room, or even just, for accessibility reasons and everything, even just the people who play the games being more diverse than ever.
It's so fantastic, these changes. As much as, yes, there's still a long way to go, let's just be proud that we're getting there.
Yeah. That's actually a conversation.
It's its own conversation that we could go on forever with. But moving along, what are some of the challenges that you face in your role as features editor?
My job requires a lot of, as I was saying before, thinking on your feet and, being able to solve problems. So as features editor, feature falls under the umbrella of anything that's not a game review or preview. So like anything from like a top 10 list to a studio profile to an interview, like those all are, that's my section. And I'm responsible for helping the writer achieve their vision and bringing their writing to the best that it can be and finding the best way to present it. You know, there's a lot that goes into the interviews that we do, the game demos that we do, and being able to present that in a way for a reader that's engaging, that you're fully explaining things well for them to understand. So a lot of my thing is to be an editor and guide through that and help people bring their writing to the level that they want. You know, it's very difficult sometimes with how fast we move, and that's always going to be the battle that I say is like, we move so fast, so it's always helpful to have another voice there to kind of be like, you know, this thing here, I like what you're doing, but it's not quite where it needs to be, or I think that section would read better here. So my job is really helping the writer organize their piece and have it presented in the best way possible.
I like that. I like that. That is a great way to clearly explain to people. Sometimes I have to reorganize things in a way that take a long time, and it can be very frustrating. But sometimes then it becomes the best thing in the whole world, and I'm really, really proud of the writer or myself.
It's very gratifying in the end. Like,
Yeah.
you go, I always say it feels like you're in this working on any piece, and I say this as a writer, is like, when you're in it, when you're writing it, you hate it. Like, it's the worst experience ever, because you're like, I just need to figure this out. Or like, this word, I need to find the right word. This word, I'm not explaining it well here. And you're like, your brain is just, you can't see it for what it is.
Yeah.
Then you finish the piece, it goes up, and the most rewarding and gratifying part is like, I have a lot of my writers who will come back and be like, you know what, like, I'm so happy with how it turned out. Or even like when I do my own work, I'm like, you know what, for all the blood, sweat, and tears that went into that, like, it's I'm pretty proud of that. And I think that's the best compliment as an editor you can ever give me, is to say, like, I helped make your piece better. And that's all that is my job, and that is what I want to do at the end of the day. It makes me feel very happy when I can hear that. And I can also see it. You can see the piece transform. But when you're in the weeds of it, you all are just like, oh my gosh, it is a frustrating process, because you're tired of looking at the damn thing. You know, you guys have been going over it. You know, it is what it is. But then when it goes up and you see people reacting to it, and you're able to, like I said, sometimes tell a story that otherwise wouldn't have been told, or, you know, feel like you got an opinion out there that really mattered. I mean, I just did an opinion piece a few issues ago just on like how sports games are including women more. And as a female sports fan, like, I love that. And that was so fun to just be able to say, like, hey, when I was a kid, I never imagined, like, the WNBA was just forming. And now NBA 2K lets you make your own WNBA player and be in the league. And how awesome is that? If little me had thought that was even a thing, like, you know, you get those pieces out there and your voice goes into them. And like I said, that passion is like what keeps me doing what I do and feeling like so awesome about it.
You sound always really energized when you finished a good piece. That's for sure. All right. Mm-hmm. So I'm going to change the question a little bit and make it a little more of a fun one. What is one of the coolest experiences you've had through your job?
Oh my God, there's so many. My job. So when I first joined Game Informer, I was actually kind of scared to go on airplanes. Like, I hated them. I hated flying. And I just did it when I had to. And now I have been all over the world. I wrote for instance, the Horizon Zero Dawn cover story that we had, which took me to Amsterdam because that's where Guerrilla Games Studio is. I've been to Japan now so many times. You know, I was on the Final Fantasy 15 cover story, and then I've covered Tokyo Game Show every year. But I think when you look at it all, and I've met a lot of really cool people through the years that, like, I'm just like, oh my God, I can't believe, like, I'm interviewing Tetsuya Nomura, who created Kingdom Hearts, one of my favorite series. But I think it's really cool to be able to visit the studios and see how games are being made. And you see everybody working on their computers and, like, passionately working on the same thing, but different parts of it. Like, it really comes through to you just like, wow, like, there's a lot that goes into making games. And I think visiting studios and getting to talk to the developers and the people who are actually creating them has really just been a highlight of my career and has honestly taught me so much. And I just love hearing their perspectives on like why they do things or why they thought this idea was good. And, you know, hearing about that creative process, no matter if it's a small or big developer or whatever, is always so insightful and interesting. And like I said, probably the best part of my job is just hearing those stories of what it takes to really make these games.
No, that's got to be one of the best and most fulfilling parts of your job, is just seeing the process come to life. It's a shame that with COVID, that makes it so much more trickier right now.
Yeah, exactly. That's why I'm like, well, I'll just do interviews through Zoom. We'll figure it out. We'll talk. But like, just even hearing, you know, it's so funny. I'll do an interview with someone and I'll think like something's a really big deal in the game, and they're just like, yeah, we just kind of put that in there. Or it's something really small, but they have like all this insight to why they did it, or just like, it just always is so fascinating because it's never what you expect. And I think that's what I love about it, is just like game development and how things come together sometimes offer these amazing stories and these unpredictable stories too.
I love it. I love learning about stuff like that, where it's just, is this a constant puzzle piece? And again, you and I have talked plenty about just the idea of parts of games being like, wow, I feel like this was really well thought out. And then, you know, you've told me like in the past, like, oh God, no, they didn't think that through. Like,
or
and
like,
I love that. I love learning about that. I think it's so cool. So what is your favorite games and gaming system? This is something one of my coworkers wants to know.
Oh boy. So
put you on the spot.
You are. I'll start with systems first. So I will always have mad nostalgia for the Super Nintendo because it was the system I cut my teeth on. I feel like I played a lot of Nintendo, but I fell in love with RPGs on the Super Nintendo. I mean, you had Earthbound, Final Fantasy VI, Secret of Mana. Like, there's a lot of really good games on there. But if I'm being honest about what my true favorite is the PS2, because it was a freaking RPG machine. And I just remember the first time I saw Final Fantasy X, I'll never forget, because it was like the graphics and the voice acting, and like, it's like that's when to me games, like, you know, they took a jump with the PS1, no doubt. But like for me, the PS2 is just like, wow, things like the stories they're going to be able to tell with the, you know, I always love cutscenes in games because that was like my reward, because I love story. And so I was just, for me, it was just that system really did it for me and took it to a new level. As for favorite games, God, I always hate this question because it's like, depends on the day that you ask me. I always will talk very highly for The Witcher 3 Wild Hunt. Spent a lot of time in that Witcher universe, and The Witcher 3 really just took everything to a new level with what I liked about choice and consequence in RPG across a huge open world in a way that I think just we never saw up into that point. Having your choices really matter. And like I said, choices and consequences were really tested in the generation that had come out in. And then Secret of Mana will always be my favorite because I grew up playing that with my grandpa, and my grandpa is the one who introduced me to RPGs. As he got older, he just wanted to keep his mind going. So he's like, I'm just going to go and play a bunch of video games, and that's going to keep my mind fresh and sharp. And so we played a lot of that together. And I'll always have fond memories of that game. And then I got to go with Chrono Trigger too. It's just, that game is still good after all these years. Like, I think it holds up. So I kind of, those are kind of in my top three, I'd say. It's so hard because with the more recent stuff, you don't know over time how you're going to feel. Because I play a lot of Overwatch. I play a lot of Overwatch with you.
Yes.
I think that game will probably, as I look back on my life, rank up pretty high just because I've spent a lot of time with friends with it, but I'm still playing it. It still feels even though it came out around the same time as Witcher, still feels recent to me. I don't know, but you can put that in my favorites. Okay, we'll it's definitely one of my favorites.
Well, let's just say we won't tell the audience how many hours you've put into Overwatch.
No, it's better that I haven't even checked my counter in a long time because I'm scared.
But I first off, I always love when you tell the story about you and your grandfather playing Secret of Mana. I think that is like the sweetest thing in the whole world. This, especially as someone who has similar memories playing games with their mom. It's always really nice to have a story where somebody else brought you into these worlds and like shared them with you. And I also maintain, I do agree about Chrono Trigger. I do think it is still like the peak of perfection for an RPG. It's not my
Yeah, and
favorite RPG, but it is perfection.
I always have to give it kudos for that, you know? And I'm a big Persona fan. Persona 3 is always going to be one of my favorites, though. I like the darker storyline. I like the characters more. But that game with social links, I remember playing it, and that was the game that introduced them, and just being like blown away by a game that was talking about issues, you know, whether it be divorce, a young man coming to terms with having a terminal illness, like all these things were in these social links. And I just like the message behind them of, if you just take some time out of your day and really listen to somebody and give them your time, you can change their lives or make their lives a lot better. And I just like that whole concept of how far kindness can go, and how you can impact someone else's life. So that's why that game really resonated with me.
Well, and let's be realistic. We need more kindness in the world, and games that approach kindness in a unique way. I mean, they're always going to be really, really memorable. I mean, especially as someone else who loves Persona 3. I mean, I cried so many times during that game because those stories are so powerful and wonderful.
Mm-hmm.
And with that, I'm going to actually ask my last question.
Oh, here we go.
You ready?
All right.
All right. So, what advice would you give to someone aspiring towards game journalism or even just the games industry?
Yeah, I think I hate to be kind of a dork here, but knowledge is power, right? So do like similar to what I did, you have to learn about the industry, right? If you want to be serious about it. And, you know, part of that is playing a lot of games just to, you know, see what ones do well, what they don't do well, learning, you know, that the history. You know, there's so many more classes now than when I was growing up. Like colleges are even like inserting, you know, video game journalism into their curriculum, which is really cool. But there's so many ways also now that you can interact with games. You know, if you have the equipment, you can start streaming if you think that's something you might be interested in, making YouTube videos. I mean, try on a bunch of things and see what fits, and also know that, you know, learning about the industry is super important. And I think keeping an eye on like Twitter and social media like that, and seeing what people are saying about games and getting different perspectives is really important. And then also looking for, you know, kind of mentors, or people you look up to, and seeing how they approach things and do things. I think you can't go wrong by knowing that like I said, my answer to this question has changed over the years. Originally, I was like, you have to be and I still believe this, like you have to love writing, you have to love games because you're going to do it a lot. But also, like I said, now I feel like the industry is changing so much that you just have to have a lot of different skills and see what works for you. And there's a lot of workshops in different, you know, ways now to try different things on and see what they work. Like was learning out like Media Molecule, they made Little Big Planet and just came off Dreams, but like they let students like come in and see the different disciplines of game design and visit their studio, like classrooms and stuff, because they say like kids don't realize when you say the word game development, it doesn't just mean like the engineering behind it. It could also mean creating music for the game, being a narrative designer. Like there's so many different disciplines. And I think realizing, you know, if you want to go into that side of it too, that there's more than just one way to do it. And so I also say, even with my job, there's more than just one way or one thing you can do within being a video game journalist now. So it is really kind of, like I said, seeing what other people are doing and what might interest you, and then trying to find out more information on it.
That's a fantastic answer, and my goodness, that is such a different answer than I would have had I stuck with the games industry. But here we are. I'm in libraries, interviewing people now.
It's changed. Like I said, my answer has changed over time because things have also changed, and there is not one right answer to that one definition of how to do it. You know what I always say too, like if you're passionate about something, you'll find a way, and you will keep, figuring out like, okay, watching what other people are doing and taking the right classes and things to put you on that path. It's not an easy industry, like as we all know, but it like I said, as somebody who does it, I love it, and I couldn't imagine myself doing anything else.
Well, Kimberly, thank you so much for your time and your energy and your passion. It's people like you that keep this industry fueled and entertained. I really appreciate your time. And yeah, I look forward to chatting with you later tonight.
Yeah, for
Take
real.
care, and thanks again.
Yeah, thank you.
You're welcome. Bye.